Mandela County was once ordinary. Families, schools, churches. But in 1992, something came through the cracks of reality. Not demons, not ghosts. Something worse. These were alternates. Authorities described them as entities capable of perfect human mimicry, but survivors said the opposite, that they don't copy. They corrupt. Their faces bend wrong. Their voices echo. Their movements lag like a video buffering inside a human body. They appear as you, but the version of you that nightmares dream about. They aren't perfect copies. They are terrifying imperfections, designed to dismantle your sanity, piece by piece. In 1993, the first 911 call was logged. A man whispered into the phone, his voice shaking, "Someone is in my house." The operator, calm and procedural, asked, "Who is in the house with you, sir?" There was a long, chilling pause before the man said, "Me." Then the line dissolved into screams, static, and a wet echo. A sound like bones snapping underwater. That call marked the official beginning of a terror that had no name, no face, and no motive beyond pure, psychological destruction. The TV phenomenon was the next sign. At exactly 3 a.m., television screens across Mandela County flickered to life, even those that were turned off. People claimed they saw their own faces staring back but smiling, even when they weren't. Some TVs were unplugged from the wall. Some families didn't even have the television in the same room. The fear was that the signal wasn't coming from an antenna, but from somewhere inside your own mind. One woman reported that her alternate on the screen whispered, "Come closer. I'm safer than your real reflection." She was never found. The Mandela County Emergency Broadcast System released a warning, interrupting regular programming with a stark, terrifying message: "Do not trust your eyes. Do not trust any familiar voices." And the final, chilling instruction: "If you see your replacement, run." But the warnings only brought more panic. People smashed mirrors, believing they were portals. They covered their TVs with thick blankets. They boarded up their windows. Some even chose to live in complete darkness, afraid their own shadow would start smiling back at them. The safety measures themselves became a prison of fear. In 1994, police discovered an entire family had vanished from their home. The scene was unsettlingly normal, yet deeply wrong. Dinner was still warm on the table. Chairs were pushed back violently, as if in a sudden panic, and every single mirror in the house was shattered from the inside, with spiderweb cracks radiating from the center, as if something had crawled out of the glass. In the youngest child's bedroom, investigators found a drawing, two identical people, holding hands. Same face, same clothes, but one had no eyes. Underneath, written in a child's shaky handwriting, were the words, "He said he was daddy." Researchers, desperate for answers, developed the mirror distortion theory. They believed alternates manipulate reflections first, like a parasite mapping its host before the takeover. The initial signs were subtle. Some reflections moved a fraction of a second too late. Some smiled a moment too early. Some blinked in an impossible, unnatural rhythm, like a coded message from another side. A local priest described one horrifying case. When she looked away from the mirror, her reflection didn't. It kept looking at her, and it smiled. She was found later, sitting on the floor in front of that same mirror, rocking back and forth, mumbling, "It's my turn to stay inside." The local church, a place of sanctuary, became ground zero for this new form of terror. Parishioners claimed they saw angels, but they were twisted, broken figures with faces like stretched wax. Their voices were warped, speaking in reverse. Their wings bent at unnatural angles, like broken arms. Their halos flickered and buzzed like dying light bulbs. An audio tape of an exorcism was later recovered from the church. On it, the priest can be heard screaming, his voice cracking with sheer terror. "This is not God. This is not God." And then, his voice just cuts off abruptly, leaving only silence. The case that solidified the horror in the public mind was the disappearance of Officer Rayner. He was responding to a call a man reported seeing a stalker trying to get into his own home. Officer Rayner's body cam footage shows him entering the quiet house, calling out, his voice echoing in the empty rooms. Then he sees it. Standing at the top of the stairs is his own body, wearing his uniform. But it has no face. Just a smooth, terrifying blank. On the recording, Rayner whispers, "That's not me." The faceless alternate turns its head slowly towards him. The footage ends with Rayner's final, desperate scream, "Don't let IT replace me." In the quiet corners of our world, there are stories that defy explanation, tales that whisper of a reality just beneath our own. Today, we journey into one such place, Mandela County, a name that has become synonymous with a unique and terrifying kind of dread, a place where the monster isn't under your bed, it's in your mirror. This is the story of the alternates. Our story begins in 1992, in the seemingly ordinary Mandela County. But something was wrong. It started subtly, a fleeting glimpse of movement in a mirror, a familiar voice calling from an empty room. People started feeling a deep, unshakable sense of unease, a feeling that they were being watched, not by a stranger, but by themselves. This was the dawn of the alternate phenomenon. The initial reports were dismissed as mass hysteria or isolated psychological episodes. People would call the police, frantic, claiming the person who looked exactly like their spouse wasn't their spouse. A child would hide from a parent, crying that they weren't their real mom or dad. But as the incidents grew, a terrifying pattern emerged. These were not simple cases of mistaken identity. They were replacements. The first documented evidence came from the Department of Temporal Phenomena, a clandestine organization tasked with investigating anomalies like this. Their early findings were chilling. They called these entities alternates, perfect, almost flawless duplicates of living individuals. But these were not clones. They were something else entirely, something that operated on a level of psychological warfare we can barely comprehend. The true horror of the alternates wasn't physical violence. They didn't need to raise a hand. Their goal was far more insidious, to drive their target to complete psychological collapse, making it easy for them to take their place. They would study their victims for weeks, sometimes months, learning every habit, every fear, every secret insecurity. They would become you, better than you. An alternate would begin its assault by exploiting your deepest anxieties. They whisper your most private fears back to you, using your own voice. Imagine hearing your own thoughts of failure, regret, or loneliness spoken aloud when you're completely alone. They manifest just at the edge of your vision, a figure that looks like you, standing just far enough away that you begin to doubt your own sanity. Is that me? Or is it a trick of the light? Researchers at the Department of Temporal Phenomena made a breakthrough when they realized the alternates were masters of mimicry, not just of appearance, but of trauma. They weaponize your personal history against you. If you have a deep-seated fear of drowning from a childhood incident, you'll start hearing the sound of water dripping or gurgling in your home with no identifiable source. If your greatest fear is abandonment, you'll hear the faint sound of footsteps walking away, just behind you, over and over again. And if your deepest, most primal fear is yourself, you will see yourself everywhere. By the late 90s, Mandela County had descended into chaos. The social fabric was tearing apart at the seams. Schools were forced to close as children became too terrified to attend. Hospitals were completely overwhelmed, not with physical injuries, but with people in states of extreme psychological distress. They would come in, begging doctors for help, claiming their parents, siblings, or even their own children weren't themselves anymore. The most disturbing cases were those who came in alone, pleading with police to arrest their own reflections, convinced the person in the mirror was the imposter. One of the most infamous pieces of evidence is surveillance tape number 14, recovered from an abandoned home in Mandela County. The grainy black and white footage shows a man sleeping peacefully in his bed. The timestamp in the corner reads 2:58 a.m. At exactly 2:59 a.m., his bedroom door creaks open. Slowly, a figure enters, a perfect replica of the sleeping man. His alternate, it moves with a chilling, unnatural quality, its head twitching in sharp, bird-like angles. It silently crosses the room and sits on the edge of the bed, beside its sleeping target. It leans in close, and though we can't hear it clearly, lip readers for the department confirmed its whisper. "You dreamed too loud." The time ticks to 3:06 a.m. Suddenly, the man in the bed jolts awake with a gasp. He looks around wildly, then his eyes fix on the foot of his bed. But the alternate is no longer sitting there. The alternate is now lying in his bed, looking at him with his own eyes. And he, the real man, is now the one standing by the door. He lets out a blood-curdling scream. The tape cuts to static. Children, with their vivid imaginations and blurred lines between reality and fantasy, were the easiest and most tragic targets. Their minds inadvertently fed the alternates, making them stronger, more convincing. A chilling report from a Mandela County kindergarten described how, over the course of a week, every child in one class began drawing the exact same picture. It was a drawing of themselves sleeping in their beds, but in every single drawing, there was a second figure standing over them, a taller, smiling version of themselves, watching. One teacher found a particularly detailed crayon drawing left on her desk, labeled with a child's scrawl, "My other me tucks me in." Then, in 1997, the phenomenon escalated. A shadow signal appeared. Across the county, televisions would suddenly switch to an unauthorized broadcast. It was silent, showing nothing but a static-filled screen, with a dark, human-like silhouette standing in the center, facing the viewer. It had no discernible eyes or mouth, just a featureless void. After 5 seconds of unnerving silence, it would slowly tilt its head. The Department of Temporal Phenomena issued an urgent warning: do not watch for more than 12 seconds. Those who did reported immediate and severe hallucinations. They saw distorted shapes moving in the corners of their rooms. They heard disembodied voices perfectly mimicking their family members, calling their names. And most terrifyingly, their own reflections would begin to move independently, waving back at them from the mirror. By the year 2000, Mandela County was a ghost town. The population had either fled or vanished. The streets were lined with houses bearing boarded-up windows and doors. Police stations were empty, their patrol cars left to rust. The churches, once a source of comfort, stood silent and desolate. A strange trend had swept through the remaining inhabitants: the destruction of reflective surfaces. Mirrors were shattered in every home. Television screens were smashed with hammers. People were running, not from a monster they could see, but from the one they couldn't escape, themselves. The last official broadcast ever transmitted from Mandela County was a simple, desperate emergency alert. A calm, authoritative voice came over the airwaves, stating, "If you see a person that looks identical to you, do not engage, do not run, do not hide." The message was cut short by a burst of static, and then, a new voice emerged from the noise. A voice that was calm, perfect, and chillingly identical to the original broadcaster. It whispered a single, final sentence: "You have already been replaced." Experts who have studied the Mandela County case have a terrifying theory. They don't believe the alternates originated there. They believe that Mandela County was simply a containment breach, a place where they escaped from, and if they escaped once, they can do it again. So now, I ask you, have you ever been home alone and heard your name whispered in your own voice? Have you ever caught a glimpse of your reflection in a darkened window, and for a split second, thought it moved when you didn't? Does your TV ever flicker to static at exactly 3 a.m.? Perhaps your alternate has already found you. Do me a favor. Take a look at your reflection. Right now. Look closely. Did it blink? Just a fraction of a second out of sync with you? This is Tales of the Dark.